So, this is the Marsh Chase, better known as the JLT Chase. This is one of the sort of least defined of the Grade 1 chases. When you look at the betting currently, there's a few horses who are either have other engagements or potentially doubtful runners, so that might be the right race to play, or it might not be. What's the current state of the market, please, Ryan, if that's possible for the Marsh Stakes?
Yeah, so Itchy Feet is, Allaho is our non or no bet market leader, 3-1. Itchy Feet's in there, 4s. Mr. Fisher, 13-2. Faugheen, 6-1. Obviously, we're unsure whether Faugheen will turn up along with Allaho in this race. It's not a race I'm madly in love with. I think it lacks proper quality. I think Itchy Feet is very beatable at the head of the market. If I was having a bet in the race, I'd probably back Sam Crow at a price. There was bad vibes going into the Limerick race about him. He subsequently burst. They think they've sorted that. I know once a horse bursts once, they can easily do it again, but he seems to be going much better than he was before the Limerick run now. If he came back to his Ballymore win, he'd have a decent chance at that sort of price, but it's not a race I'm in love with, and I'd probably give it a miss.
Just before we pass it on, Ryan, the boost for the Thursday, so you can have £50 on this up until around 10 o'clock, which is?
Yeah, so what I'm going to do with the boost, we're going to make it to 11 o'clock because we're obviously running a little bit late. So I'll just give the two enhancements then. We're giving Paisley Park in the Stayers Hurdle 4 to 6 boosted out to 11 to 10. So I think anyone who has a pet for account should be back in that 11 to 10. And Album Photo is 7 to 2. We pushed that to 5 to 1. So they're available on site now. I'm looking at them at the moment. So I'd advise people to get on at them prices.
Right, so that's the end of the night. Everyone just back Paisley Park at odds against and then we'll go. So on the Marsh Chase. Rory?
Yeah, I do quite like the way Itchy Feet is taken to chasing, but I think the same can be said of Easy Game. Who I think his form is at least comparable, and he's about double the price. I think there is still a slight doubt as to which race he's actually going to turn up in, but virtually every firm is non-running a bet by this stage, so I think Itchy Feet, the first day at Christmas time, he beat Allaho. He did have the advantage of having a run, but then last time in the Flowgrass Chase at the Dublin Racing Festival, he got very close to Fahim. I think it's arguable that he was ridden slightly inefficiently too. Fahim was obviously up there throughout. Easy Game was given a patient ride. He even dropped back to last, heading into the back straight, before making his ground quite quickly at the second last. He's only had 2 runs over fences. He's open to further improvement. I think he's quite a lot to like about Easy Game.
The only bet that I think I'm going to have I haven't had a bet yet in the Marsh, but I do think I'll end up backing Sam Crow to some extent unless he crashes in price completely. But he's obviously been a problem. He is a problem horse. He's stuffy. He's had wind issues. He's had all sorts of problems, but he does arrive in the race fresh. He's had 2.5 months off the track. There's no doubt in his ability. We've all seen it from him over hurdles. It's not the strongest looking of novice chases. If you go back to, as Ryan said, if you go back to the pick of Sam Crow's form, even looking at how impressive he was on his chasing debut earlier on in the season, and the race that he was probably going to give Fakir Dudery as well before he came down. I think he retains that ability when they've got him right, and if I was looking at it on a day-to-day basis, if I'm betting in a 3-mile handicap chase at Exeter or something like this afternoon, I'd look at a horse like him and think they've given him a break, they've freshened him up. With a top trainer like Gordon Elliott, there's every chance that they've got him right, and if they have got him right, he's well capable of winning what doesn't look the strongest of novice chases at the festival. So I'm pretty sure I'll end up backing Sam Crow as long as he doesn't completely crash in price, because everybody else is thinking the same. But it wouldn't be a race that I'd be having big stakes in.
Are you thinking the same, Billy, or not? Are you forgiving Sam Crow?
Definitely not. I couldn't have Sam Crow on my mind. Yes, the horse has loads of ability, but there's too many ifs and buts with Sam Crow for my liking. As I said earlier, I'm a massive fan of Allaho. I hope he runs in this race, because I don't really think he's an out-and-out 3-miler. I think he's just a horse with a very high cruising speed and a really good jumper. He does lack a little bit of experience. He's only had 2 runs over fences, which isn't ideal, and certainly for the price he is, it's not ideal. And as Rory said, there's no real reason why Allaho is 3-1, I think, as it is there, and an Easy Game is 7, because Easy Game beat Allaho. Okay, he had a little bit of he had fitness on his side at Christmas, and I've no doubt that the Mullins camp think Allaho is a better horse than Easy Game, but just looking down through this race, this is going to cut up quite a bit. A lot of these will have they've other options and they'll run in handicaps and whatever, so it mightn't be a huge field. And even though I'd be very slow to go against Allaho, I think at the current price, I think Easy Game is certainly the bet in the race.
Just for what it's worth, with regards Allaho, his price has shortened up quite a bit on the exchanges. I think Ryan will probably be able to confirm that, but it looks like he's been pretty well backed on the exchanges in the last sort of 24 hours or so, Allaho, for this race. So it seems as if it's very much up in the air. The impression has been all along that Mullins wants to run him in the Marsh. Maybe the owners are more tempted by the RSA. That's certainly the vibe you've been getting. And if they do run Allaho in the Marsh, then he will have a good chance.
Yeah, and the one we haven't mentioned, of course, is Faheen, who, if he ran in the race, would be well clear on Timeform ratings. He's certainly on our figures, he's the best novice chaser that's run this year. But I very much get the impression that they're not inclined to take him to Cheltenham. Now, maybe he'll rock up there, but I think at this stage he's a 12-year-old. I don't think he's anything to prove. So, as I say, if he runs there, he probably deserves to be favoured, but I don't think he'll go.
So it's very much up in the air, that Marsh Chase. Unlike the Ryanair, because this is really defined. 2 horses who we know are going for the Ryanair now, A Plus Tard and Min. Is it just a head-to-head, Ryan, according to the betting, or is it more than a 2-horse race, this?
No, I think Froden, sorry, we're on the Ryanair, yeah. Yeah, I think Froden and Riders on the Storm, like, they're obviously single-figure prices too, along with A Plus Tard and Min. A Plus Tard heads the betting with us currently at 9-4. Min is in there at 3-1. For me in the race, I think Min, as we mentioned earlier on in it, that he's better over 2.5 miles these days. He obviously wasn't able to put it up to Shackleton Perswala last day. He won fairly easily in the end. But he's 4 from 5 over 2.5 miles. He generated his best time figure when he won at Aintree last season, beating Palillo by 20 lengths. I think he's much more at home these days over that trip. So I'd have them closer together in the betting personally myself, between him and A Plus Tard. As far as Riders on the Storm, who we're 7-1 about at the moment, I know another trader in the office likes him, but I can't have him on my mind. Traffic Fluid was matched at 1.07 on the Betfair Exchange the last day at Ascot. He was matched at a high of 12.5 Riders on the Storm. I think that tells its own story. Traffic Fluid would be a massive price here, so he's a single figure price. I can only see him getting bigger on the day, but for me, I think Main back over 2.5 miles. It's about time they ran with this race, and I think he'd probably just shade it from A Plus Tard.
Agree with pretty much every part of that. Rides on the Storm, which means he went like the best horse in the race by a mile, because he paid for trying to beat Surname, got the better of Surname, and would have been picked off. The trouble is he had a really hard race, and they're not going to complain. I mean, he was the horse who the secretary failed to declare for the big handicap at Cheltenham. Massive boo-boo seemingly, but then they won even more money at Ascot. They've done really well with him since they got him from Tom Taft. Twister can improve these horses, but I'm with Ryan in the sense that what A Plus Tard did last season was very spectacular, but Min would have done exactly the same off that sort of handicap mark. Min's an absolute 2.5 miler. He's given Shackleton Perswala, like for the Champion Chase, a real race the other day. This is his trip. His festival record includes defeats against a tip-top Altior on both occasions in a Supreme and in that Champion Chase as well. I mean, if he's going to win a race at the festival, he's only just turned 9. I think it's this one over the optimum trip for him. And for me, he's just got several efforts that are better than A Plus Tard can offer, even though A Plus Tard does have the potential.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying in that Min's best form is ahead of A Plus Tard at present. But Min's rating does come from Aintree, and although he has bumped into Altior twice when he's turned up at Cheltenham, I just can't get A Plus Tard's staggeringly impressive performance at last year's festival out of my mind. I know it was only a handicap, and he, as it turned out, he was beating probably just moderately handicapped horses, but he absolutely thrashed them. He surged up the hill like a horse that absolutely relished that test. He jumped brilliantly, and I don't think he's done anything this year to mitigate against the view that he's a really top-class 2.5 mile horse in the making. He probably needed his reappearance, and the ground was probably soft enough at Navan. And after that, he went to Leopardstown at Christmas, and he beat Chacun-Pour-Soir. I guess a lot of this race comes down to how much you believe the Mullins camp in that Chacun-Pour-Soir needed the run at Christmas, because he got beaten by Aploutard at Christmas, and then he came out and he beat Min quite comfortably the last day of the Dublin Racing Festival a month later. But to me, Aploutard retains a lot of potential. He's only 6. He was brilliant there last year, and I think he's definitely the right favourite. I do think he's probably at about his minimum price at the moment, and I do expect him to be bigger on the day. So if you want to back Aploutard like I do, I'd advise waiting. I think he might be 3-1 on the day, and I think he'd be a really good bet at that price.
Yeah, I'd be very much in the Aploutard camp as well. I can't really have Freudon this year. I think Min and Freudon will probably soften each other up a little bit. That's my take on the race. I can see Rachel Blackmore just being able to sit in behind what's likely to be a strong gallop. Freudon being pestered more by Min than he was last year. He got quite an easy time of things in front of Freudon last year, and I wouldn't be sure, to be honest, that he's in quite the same form this time around that he was last year anyway. So my main view on the race would be to be against Freudon, but I do think that Aploutard will have the race very much run to suit him. He's an exceptional jumper. He's still getting better, and you can look at some of Min's form and say that it's better at this stage maybe than Min's, but I would say that it's a flip of a coin job, to be honest, and one of them's going the right way and the other is probably standing still. So for me, given the likelihood of the pace scenario, we've been taking on Freudon at the head of affairs as well, and maybe them two softening each other up a little bit. I think Aploutard will be able to come and pick back late. I wouldn't necessarily agree about the price point though, to be honest. I think the race will probably cut up a little bit. I think a lot of people will want to start taking on Freudon, and particularly riders on the Storm who are single figure prices at the moment, and I can see maybe very early in the morning on Thursday you might get bigger prices about Aploutard, but I think he'll be smashed up late on.
That's sort of 2-all, Billy, in terms of Min versus Aploutard. Are you decisive one way or the other?
Can I sit on the fence on this one? I think I'd really love to see Min winning this race, because I think it's the one thing that's missing off the CV. He's been an absolutely top horse for a number of seasons now, but the one thing that is going to define him if he doesn't win is that he's never won at Cheltenham. He probably deserved to. He's done everything else, and this is undoubtedly his best chance. But I do think I'd have to agree with the lads. I mean, it's kind of a toss of the coin. Min is the horse that's been there and done it. You've Aploutard, he's up and coming. He's only 6. He was very good at the festival last year. Now, let's face it, that form didn't work out particularly well. So maybe it flatters him slightly, but I'd have to say the way he won at Leopardstown over Christmas, I think if he was mine, I'd be more inclined to run him in the Champion Chase, because he was so good over 2 miles. I think it would really suit him, and obviously they've decided this is a softer option, which of course it is. But I think he's a horse with a load of speed. Ron is right, it's a toss of a coin. My heart says Min, but my head says Aploutard.
Yeah, because obviously it's so tight between these two in any metric that you look at them, or any even opinion that you've got. I think approach might be an interesting one here. We don't quite know the impact of the Dublin Racing Festival on the Cheltenham Festival. In the first year there was 8 winners came on from it, and you thought, oh well, that's the perfect segue. Well, last year there was only 2. And I think that generated the highest time figure of all this season. It was clearly a really brutal race, and one of the themes of this season has been recovery time after a hard race. Surname and Altior to some extent both seem to be bottomed out by that Ascot run. Even Lost in Translation, when he won the Betfair Chase, wasn't anything like the same horse at Kempton. So maybe it's the approach of Aploutard comes in fresh, whereas Min comes in off that hard race. That's just my thinking of how it might swing. With the Stayers Hurdle, we've got the price boost, the juicy price boost about Paisley Park. Is anyone going to say that Paisley Park isn't going to win this days? No. Billy?
He'll win unless Benny the Jew runs, and if Benny the Jew runs, I think she'll beat him. But it looks like she won't.
Last year we were in a similar position with Paisley Park. We talked about betting without. Is there anything? There's more than one way to skin a cat. Anything in the betting without market?
To be honest with you, I wouldn't be anything away from the obvious here. To be honest, I think the Cleve Hurdle run of Somerville Boy was very good. He's always looked like a stayer. They ran him over 2 miles for way too long probably because he won the Supreme, to be fair. But that was a proper stamina sapping Supreme that he won. He proved himself a stayer in the Relkeel. He proved himself a stayer when he was second to Paisley Park in the Cleve, and I do think he'll run very well again. But clearly Paisley Park's got his measure, hasn't he? So look, we can all wax lyrical about Paisley Park. His chance is very obvious, and I think most of us, I think it's fair to say, would think that he'll win, and he's a justifiable, very short price favourite.
Is that 11 to 10? Very generous, the price boost.
Oh yeah, massively. I mean, he's in a classic dominating stayers hurdle mode, the mould of so many we've seen before, very similar to Big Bucks, very similar to Ingles Dreamer, keeps a bit back for himself, but one of my favourite races at the festival was even just a snapshot of it really, was what he did last season from the home turn to getting in front of the last. It was sensational, and I think he beat the mare as well, but she's not going to go, so it's all moot. 11 to 10 we've had 4 price boosts, and that is undoubtedly the most generous, I think.
It's quite interesting your point you make as well, Dan, about Paisley. You've mentioned sort of Ingles Dreamer, Big Bucks. Horses do come back and win the stayers. You know, you look at Gold Cup winners and they have brutally hard races over fences, over 3 1/4 miles. And there's no question that it does sort of end some horses a little bit. Running in that type of race that is that demanding. The Stayers Hurdle isn't a race that does that, and the record of horses coming back and winning it again is formidable, really, to be fair, and it kind of proves the point that they don't sort of bottom themselves out by doing it, by winning a Stayers. Paisley Park has gone and proven himself just as good this season as well, so I mean, have you got a max bet on that? 11
yeah, it's all the enhancements tonight are max bet of 50 quid, so at least it's 55 quid in everyone's pockets.
Yeah, get your 50 quids on it.
Yeah, just an interesting point in it as well is that Big Bucks, that he obviously won the race 4 times, and 3 of the times he won it after he won it the first year at 6 to 1. He won it 5 to 6, 10 to 11, and 5 to 6. So they generally find it hard to send horses off maybe the price they should be in this race, which is more towards 2-1 than even money. So I think he will probably go off in around 4 to 5, 10 to 11 on the day, and I couldn't put anyone off back him at that price.
I think something else about that record of them coming back reflects as well that a lot of very good hurdlers have gone chasing by then, and so you're not left with any new talent to see off. The new talent you might say this time around will be City Island, but he's had a pretty checkered record over fences since, and I wouldn't get excited as we said earlier about the Novice Hurdle form from last season, so yeah, 11 cents clearly a very good price.
I think there's a chance that he's even better this year as well, isn't there? Because you referenced that move that he had to make in the early part of the straight in last year's race, because he got himself a little bit behind, and he did have to make up a lot of ground, and he did it really well. But everything about him from last year suggests that the way that Cleve Hurdle was run this year, he might have been vulnerable in, and actually he coped with it really well in what was a steadily run race. Somerville Boy was allowed his own way in front, and he didn't set a strong gallop at all, and there wasn't much evidence of the flat spot. I thought Paisley Park picked up really well, to be honest, suggesting that he could be even better this year.
That's a really interesting point, I think, that Roy makes. If he was going to get beat, it would probably be in the Cleve because of the way that race developed and the fact he was coming in pretty cold, having had to miss that engagement at Ascot. So I've never seen a horse win by only a length and a quarter that's had so much in hand, just absolutely taking the piss up the run, and it was some sight. I just want to talk about another race on the Thursday before we get into the handicaps, because the Mare's Novice race is a little more interesting than most years, because normally the simple path is back to Willie Mullins' horse. There's been 4 runnings, he's won it 4 times, 3 times with a short price favourite. But I was just looking at the betting here, Ryan. What do you call this horse? Lamar Kisk. I just, from an onlooker, it's won a Limerick Maiden Mares Hurdle by half a length, and it's really tight in the betting.
Yeah, I think it's more again on reputation. If you watch that run back, she travelled really well into the race, was on heavy ground on that occasion, and she just ended up scraping home in the end, but I think she was worth more than the winning margin suggested. I think it all depends on what Paul Townend rides in this race, because Willie Mullins obviously has a strong hand every year. If he does ride her, she will go off in around the price she is, and if he doesn't, she could go off treble the price. Just want to give a mention in the race is Santa Rosa. She's 12-1 with us, not on no bet. She's some really good bumper form from last season. She's only had one run over hurdle so far, and that's probably a little bit against her going into a race like this. She's done a lot of things wrong on that occasion. She hung a little bit left, but she does jump hurdles straight, which is a help. And the second, John Snow, she was only a couple of lengths behind him, and he came out and won a maiden hurdle since the other day at Leopardstown. Well, at around 12-1, her bumper form ties in with the likes of Colreevy, who's half her price. Dermot McLaughlin's a good, shrewd enough trainer from back home, and he's had a double the other day at Leopardstown as well. So I'd put her up as an each way bet, but as I said, whatever Paul Townend rides and whatever the first choice is, the Willie ones will go off a short enough price, I'd imagine.
I think the current favourite is this Manila Melody, who also is Henry de Bromhead. Now, she won the Solarina, which has been the way into this race. First 3 years, Willie Mullins won this after winning the Solarina with those L horses. Did Honeysuckle win it last year, so she would have won this as well.
She did, yeah.
Just look at the market. Are you surprised at the price of either of the top two in the betting?
Well, as Ryan touched on there, I'm surprised at how short La Marquise is, because she did scramble home in a Limerick Maiden Hurdle. Now, it was 2 miles and 6, and it was probably too far for her. It was desperate ground, and she travelled like much the best horse in the race for most of the way, but she only scrambled home. Now, they said she had a big blow afterwards. I think actually Paul Townend hopped off her immediately after the run in that day, because she was giving so much of a heave. So yeah, she's entitled to improve a good bit. Obviously they think the world of her, but having said that, I think 11-4 about Manila Melody is a huge price on what she has done. Her form is head and shoulders above these mares. She was a really good bumper mare last year. The one only slight negative about Manila Melody is the trip. She won her maiden hurdle over 2.5 miles. She won the Solarine over 2 1/4 at Fairyhouse. Now, it's not a testing 2 1/4, but ideally I think she wants to be going farther than 2 miles, and if she ran in the Ballymore, I think she might be the biggest danger to Envoy and Lynn. So I have no doubt she's the best horse in the race. I think the trip is the only slight negative. I'm hoping the ground is still a little bit soft at that stage, because her form is, to my eye anyway, it's way better than anything else in the race. She's beaten all her main rivals, the likes of Colreevy, the likes of Dalsita. I think the Irish mares are much better than the English ones, and what I've seen so far, and I think Manila Melody is the banker bet, outside of Paisley Park obviously, on Thursday.
Yeah, the reason I asked Billy that was just because, looking at it from an outsider's point of view, I really thought that this horse Manila Melody was going to be more like 9-4, 2-1, because the sort of artificial price with that La Marquise, and then the best of the British is, or the shortest price of the British is that Floressa, who was kicked out of the way by Lady Buttons at Doncaster, and it just seems that I wouldn't be surprised if Manila Melody went off for more like 2-1 for that race. Those who were here last year will remember that Billy said the ride of the season was when Davy Russell got Sire du Berlay just into 6th in the qualifying run ahead of the Pertemps final. Same race, same rider. Tell us what happened in that race this year, Bill.
What was I saying about the definition of madness earlier on? Yeah, same ride, same race, same stable, same jockey, Davy Russell, this time on the Storyteller, did exactly the same thing. He came from out of the clouds under, let's say, vigorous hands and heels, but that was all it was, and finished 6th in the last, I'd say he was probably the last 20 yards, never nearer 6th, had to finish in the top 6 to qualify, and got him home exactly where he wanted him. I think he's, the term smuggled into the race, I think is the best way to put it. He's arguably the class horse of the race. He won the plate here a couple of years ago over fences. I think his hurdle mark now is only 2 pounds higher than what he won that off. Yet his chase form in the interim has been far in excess of that. If he ran here off his chase mark, he'd have about 12 or 14 pounds more to carry, I think. He's a horse that's crying out for 3 miles these days. He didn't get it that often over fences, but I think he's like, yeah, he's been well found in the market now. He's about 6 or 7 to 1, but I think he's even at that, I think he's a great bet. The only small downside perhaps is that I think that they're probably lining him up for the trip or for a tilt at the National as well, but I think Gordon Elliott is too cute now to pass up a good opportunity, and they've got a really good one here in the Storyteller. The other Irish horse that I like in the race, and it's a very similar story, but I think she's a bit too short for my liking now, is Relegate. She caught loads of people's eye at Punchestown, I think it was, in a qualifier. A similar kind of a story. She finished fourth. Fourth was as close as she was ever going to finish in that race, but she had to do that to get in, and she'll just about get in. She's only rated 137, so she'll sneak into the bottom of the handicap. But Relegate's problem last year with Willie Mullins was she just didn't jump hurdles well enough, and she made a couple of mistakes at Punchestown, so it put me off her slightly, and I think she's a shorter price than she probably deserves to be. She is a Cheltenham bumper winner from a couple of years back, but I really can't see beyond the Storyteller and the Bartlett.
Just for one for Ryan, that it looked to me as if Relegate was the one who crashed in price out of all the handicaps when the weights came out last week.
Yeah, obviously having watched her run back, I don't think she was too busy on winning that race. Just I would say about her is that in the past she hasn't been the best at jumpers over hurdles, and she obviously gets herself far enough behind in races and then runs on like she did in the Grade 1 Novice Hurdle last season, Leopardstown behind Commander of Fleet. So she's not a horse I'd fully trust, but obviously on her bumper form she looks very well handicapped. But I just have a slight question mark that she's not the best jumpers in the world, and she might get too far behind to play a leading role at the finish.
See the case of both of those horses, very well handicapped. One thing I'd note about this race generally, it's probably the best handicap to attack at this point, because due to cancellations, abandonments, whatever you want to call them, we've had fewer qualifiers this year, so pretty much the field as you see it now, which would normally have 70 or 80 in it at this stage, is only 35 or something like that. So the field is pretty fixed. I don't think Tracy Dennis-Corthy, who has done really well to win 2 handicaps, I thought might be an Albert Bartlett horse actually, won the qualifier here. Suspect that horse isn't going, so there's at least one more name won't be on there. I'm not saying this is a bet actually, because it's already made joint favourite, but Phoenix Way is really interesting. Won the qualifier at Huntingdon under a ride that was almost certainly intent, as Jamie's doing there, on winning by as little distance as possible, while making it look as hard a work as possible. And horse had loads in hand, gave the runner-up Kansas City Chief a head start. That horse got 3 or 4 lengths away from him. Kansas City Chief would have gone one better at Donning the other day, had he not run out approaching the last. So that took a timely form boost. A lack of experience is a concern, and if the ground was bad at this stage, that might be a concern as well, because Phoenix Wave doesn't look a slow horse, but I think he's a very well handicapped horse potentially, and I don't think the rise for Huntingdon at all takes into account the improvement he has in him and probably the level of form he's got already.
Have you got one for the handicap story?
Yeah, we mentioned it earlier, or Billy mentioned it earlier, plan of attack. I suspect the Kim Muir has been the plan for this horse. It's a horse trained by Henry de Bromhead. He's a novice. He's only had 4 runs of the fences. He's won 2 of them, and on the latest one, he ran a cracker in the Paddy Power at Christmas at Leopardstown. I think he's even better than the result that day. It was a standing start, and he got kind of caught out on the standing start and was further back than his rider wanted him. It took a long time to work his way to the front, but he did so after the 3rd last. He pressed on early in the straight in what had been a well-run race and was only headed late on. He does have an extra couple of furlongs to go, but if he can get out on terms and conserve energy, he's basically a sound jumper. He's a novice, he's only had 4 runs of the fences, and I like the fact that Barry O'Neill, as Billy was referencing earlier, has ridden him quite a lot in his career. I think he's ridden him 5 times, and 3 of those were to wins. I suspect one of these amateur races at the festival has been his target for a long time, and I suspect that the Kim Muir fits better, given that he's rated 140, only £5 higher than what he ran off at Leopardstown. I quite like plan of attack in the Kim Muir.
Can I proffer another handicapper? She's a past festival winner, Shattered Love, who won the JLT as was back in the day, and a good renewal of it as well. She's in both the Ultimate on the first day, and she's in the Plate on the 3rd day, the Thursday. Backed up a both non-runner no bet on the basis that you're losing nothing if she goes for t'other, and what I thought was pretty telling with the last time was how well she saw her race out. She was up against Chrissy's Dream, absolute mudlark, stays extremely well, and that horse, basically the race was his from the moment. Real Steel clearly wasn't going to run a race at all. So you think, oh, maybe it was slightly thin, but I think Chrissy's Dream was off for his life and ran to his absolute peak, and staying though he is, he wasn't getting any further away from Shetland Love after the last. There was a massive turn in the corner from her. Cheek pieces evidently worked. It was the first time she'd had them on. She's down to 149 now. Her only previous run in a handicap, I think, was off mid 150s. She was mid to high 150s when she was winning a JLT. For me, she's potentially one of the best handicapped horses at the festival, assuming I'm not wrong and that wasn't a bit of a false dawn. I don't think it was. I thought the way she saw her race out was indicative of a horse who's right back on song.
Let's move on to the Friday, the last day. Have we got the races of the Triumph or not? So, ratings are important here because the Timeform appreciation of Solo from last week, or the week before, is very different from the BHA. So that adjusted figure, in Timeform terms, it's 144. The BHA went a stone higher, virtually a stone higher, on 157. So a bit of a discrepancy, big discrepancy there with their assessment of Solo, who just dropped in late on, big pebble in this juvenile pool. Ryan, is Solo the clear favourite right now?
I wouldn't say clear favourite. He is favourite in our bet, and he's 3-1 at the moment, just ahead of Goshen, who's 7-2. It's 4-1 All Mankind, 6-1 Aspire Tower, and it's bigger prices than the rest. It's not a race I've generally got involved in over the years, and I'm probably the same this year. Just the one thing I would mention is that people who are back in Solo, the time of the race from Kempton was much slower than both the Dovecote and the Kingwell on that occasion. It was 4 seconds slower than the Kingwell and 3 seconds slower than the Dovecote. So I don't know where the handicapper got 157 from for him. The horse he beat, Fujimoto Flyer, excuse me, is not a grade 1 horse in my opinion either. So I'd knock the form as well as the times on that occasion. So whether he should be favoured or not, I'm not too sure. For me, Goshen has probably looked the best of them, but it's not a race I'd be getting involved in. I would just mention that the fact there's only 2 hurdles in the last 3/4 of a mile for Goshen should help him. As a jumping is probably not the best.
Yeah, I think the way is open here for a bet because I do think the Solo's overappreciated there. You and I both like Goshen, don't we, Dan?
Yeah, I think he's the best horse in the race, and possibly not even that close. I mean, winning in races on the flat, you're supposed to win flat handicaps by margins within 1 or 2 lengths. He was brutalising horses despite going up in the weights all the time. Aggregate winning margin of nearly 30, I think, from those 3 flat wins, and he's done that 30 on its own in at least one of his starts so far. Everybody's picked holes in him because, yes, there's his tendency to go to his right, and the fact he's done it in the mud. I'd be perhaps more concerned about the latter if he does dry out slightly. But I think people are just falling the trap, saying, oh, he's only winning in small fields, the form must have holes in it. The horse who finished second, Nordano, obliterated a field of experienced Ascot handicappers from a high mark next time. He couldn't get anywhere near Goshen. Goshen just destroyed him. And the 4th horse, Homer, came out and won a handicap subsequently as well. Nothing wrong with the form. A freakish, strong running horse who I think if they kept him on the flat, he'd be running in all the cup races. I don't think he's that good. Yeah, of course, it's not ideal if you go right, but as Ryan says, you jump the 1-3 out, which is probably about 6 furlongs from home, and then you have the one before the straight, and then if you jump right at the last, it doesn't matter anyway because you end up on the rail, which is where you want to be. So I'm not even that bothered about that. He definitely should be favoured for me because he's the best horse in the race, and it isn't that there are 8 obstacles in the way. But if this was just a flat race over 1.5 miles or 2 miles, it was so one-sided it wouldn't be fair. So I see no reason to believe that he's not the definite value in this race.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to be picky about Goshen, specifics of what he does at certain points in the race, but the simple fact are, he's won his 3 hurdle races by 23 lengths, 34 lengths, and then an ease down 11 lengths. And each time he's shown a component that is absolutely perfect for the Triumph. And his best friend in all this is All Mankind. He couldn't have wished for a better foil in a race like this than a horse like him. So the bottom line is I really think Goshen it's got the perfect setup to what his skill set is.
Yeah, I think people are falling into a trap again of thinking that he's some one-dimensional front runner. He's going to the front in these races because he's significantly better than the horses he's running against. All Mankind would be a flakier horse for me who has to lead, and if he doesn't, he might spit it. He'll go off in front. Aspire Tower might be with him. Unless they're not going fast enough for Goshen, I see no reason why they won't just sit second or third. He made all for 2 of the 3 flat wins, but he didn't make all for the last one, when he again won by a wide margin. So looks fairly congested on those ratings, but I think he's a fair way ahead of them personally.
Were you a bit disappointed, Billy, with Aspire Tower, even though he probably would have won if he stood up last time? I thought he was going to be a really good juvenile when he won those first 2, but was he a bit laboured last time, even though he probably would have won?
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. He probably would have won. I think he'd have hung on, but you'd have to say he'd been vastly superior to those horses the time before. He wasn't going to be as impressive. I don't know, I'm not totally convinced, but he's probably the best of the Irish Aspire Tower, but I don't think the race is going to suit him at all. As Dan was saying, all Mankind is an out-and-out front runner. Aspire Tower, just at Christmas, he absolutely demolished the horse. He just went off out in front. They couldn't get near them. And although he might have hung on the last day, he wouldn't have been that impressive. I don't think this race will be run to suit him. I think he might just capitulate late on. And if he does, I'm not going to oppose Goshen. I don't have a particularly strong view on the race, but it might set up for something like a Wave of the Sea, who I couldn't see winning the race, but he has lots of experience and he jumps well and he stays really well. So if they do go a mad gallop, I can see Mark Walsh just dropping him in and creeping away home, and he'll be staying on at the finish. He can pick up a place, but that's probably as good as he is.
Just to pick up there on what the guys were saying about Solo, I tried really hard to get enthused about his performance at Kempton, and however hard you try, from a time point of view, you just can't. The bare overall time wasn't good. Whatever sectional marker you choose to try to make it good, you just can't on the other races on that card. And for all it looked like he had a lot in hand, it's possible that the market has overreacted to that, given what I'm saying. I've got no real angle into the race otherwise, except that there's a horse, or there was a race on the same day as that Adonis Hurdle at Kempton at Fairy House. I think it was about 20 minutes later. As the Adonis at Kempton at Fairy House, the winning fair juvenile hurdle. Mullins had the first and third, I think. The winner was a horse called Burning Victory, who jumped appallingly. But the horse that was third that day is a horse called Hook Up. That's Hook Up. I'm not sure if she's going to run or not, but she's a horse trained by Willie Mullins, owned by Rich Ritchie, who's still a novice over hurdles at this stage of the season, so it makes sense for her to run in all the top races. If she's going to lose her maiden tag, it may as well be in the Triumph. I thought she shaped really, really well in that race. They didn't go that quick. She was held up. She got shuffled back to last after the third last. And from there, she made a massive move around the outside. She was in front before the second last. She was headed on the run-in, and then she was kind of intimidated by the winner, who's a lot bigger than her. It may be that she's not good enough at all, but she's a massive price. I think she's something like 40-1, non-runner, no bet. I think you can do a lot worse than backing her each way in the race, in which, as the lives have kind of alluded to, there's a chance that there is a bit of a burn-up up front here, and there is a chance that there is something at a big price that's going to come and fill the frame, and I quite like her prospects of hitting the frame.
Let's talk about the Alba Bartlett now. This seems a pretty classy renewal, a bit unusual in terms of the strength and depth that we've got. I'll just ask Ryan to tell us about Monkfish as well. I don't know much about him, and yet he's bang there in the market.
Yeah, he was obviously really impressive when he won the last day. He hadn't run well, Fred, well beaten. He obviously came out and won a good race at Punchestown since. And the form of his maiden hurdle second in Fairy House was very strong too. So maybe on connections and a little bit of reputation, he's as short as 11-2 with us in the betting. Time Hill though heads our market. He's been heading this market for quite some time now at 9-2. latest exhibition is in there, 6-1, obviously won a grade 1 in Leopardstown at the Dublin Racing Festival. Just want to give a mention that a price is Fury Road. At the moment it looks like the ground might turn up good to soft, which I probably wouldn't be as keen on him as I would be if it was soft. He won a race at Limerick at Christmas and he travelled very easily the whole way around. Didn't really have to be shaken up until after the last. If the ground was soft on the day, I think he could nearly turn the form around latest exhibition. With a mixture of a better ride and the softer ground, I think would give him a chance of turning the form around. But it's 9-2 the field. You can give plenty of horses a chance in the race, so I'd be looking at him each way maybe, but it's not a race again I have a strong view on.
Yeah, I'd second a pretty big positive for Fury Road in the Albert Bartlett. I think he's a really big price actually at 14s, and they are forecast a little bit more rain I think towards the back end of the week. There's every chance, if you remember back to the Dublin Racing Festival a month ago, there were plenty of horses being withdrawn even on the day because connections were feeling that the ground was too quick for them to be taking their chance, and I'm pretty sure at Cheltenham next week it will be softer than it was at Leopardstown, which has got to be in the favour of Fury Road. As well as that, they didn't go quick enough for him really. If you look at the race, latest exhibition won it, and he was always handy. Cobbler's Way made the running, the time was very slow. The three horses that beat him basically were always close to the pace. Fury Road was held up, they didn't go quick enough, the ground wasn't soft enough, and it wasn't enough of a stamina test. Well, the pace will almost certainly be stronger. For one thing, as I say, I think the ground will be softer. I'd be very strong on his chance at the price that he is anyway, Fury Road. He was sent off favourite for the Leopardstown race, and it was quite clear to me that he wasn't seen to best effect. His profile going into it was a really positive one. He's got proven stamina, bundles of it. You need it for the Albert Bartlett traditionally. Looks like that'll be the case again. So yeah, I think he's a really big price, and I do think he'll shorten up.
Yeah, Time Hill's a horse who poses a real question in this race because, as Ryan's saying, he's been the figurehead horse in the whole market from the very start of the season. Really, he represents a really strong bumper form from last season that we discussed. And I thought he flicked his tail a couple of times. He's from a family of horses that have largely been temperamental. That was the only sign I've seen of it from him. But it was a pretty big effort, that really. Jamie had known the Cashel man a lot more than I would, ex-flat horse, but he'd dominated a Newbury Handicap prior to that after getting a similar ride. And Time Hill conceded first run significantly to him and cut him down, and then had enough about him to go away again. He does shape like he'll stay. At the minute, I think he's the right favourite, and I am actually. It's one of those where I've only just referred to the market again after probably a month or so away from it. I'm a bit surprised he is as big as that, considering he's a horse that everybody's had earmarked for this race ever since he made his hurdling debut in the graded race, the Persian War at Chepstow, and won that first time.
Yeah, I'll pick up here. I think this is actually probably one of my strongest opinions of the week. I really like latest exhibition, who won the grade 1 at Leopardstown, the Dublin Racing Festival. I've kind of done a bit of an about turn on this race. So initially I was keener on Monkfish, and while his form has been frank, I just think that latest exhibition is exactly the sort of horse that you want for this race. I understand what the guys were saying, that Fury Road was sent off favourite for that race and maybe he wasn't seeing the best effect, but I'm not convinced that latest exhibition was seeing the best effect either, and he still won it quite readily in my eyes. He had to come around the first two into a quickening pace. It wasn't a true test, that was 2 miles 6. It wasn't a true test. He ground his way to the front late on, or sort of at the last, and I think he was idling up the running. I think he's got lots more to come. His dam, interestingly, his dam was also trained by Paul Noden. She was third in Kivega's first Mayor's Hurdle. She stayed 2 miles 6. She never went further than that, but she's related to a whole load of 3 milers. I just think that this horse is going to be even better when he tackles 3 miles. He's got form with some of the best Irish novices around over 2 miles. He travelled quite well for a long way against Abracadabra over 2 miles and Navan one day. He then beat Andy Dufresne, who was really short in the betting that day back at Navan as well, next time over 2.5, despite making a really bad mistake around halfway. He also made a slight mistake last time, but generally his jumping was fine. I think he's going to be even better over 3 miles. I like the fact that he's 7 for this race. I think it's often, as the guys have alluded to, it's often it's often a race for horses with more experience. I think the fact that he's 7 is a big thing. A few 7-year-olds have won this race. But having said that, a lot of people, it's quite trendy nowadays to sort of quote the fancy prices of winners of the Albert Bartlett, sort of 33 to 1, 25 to 1 and all that. But every time people do that, they seem to forget the fact that it's been run 15 times, and in 4 of those years it's been won by horses that started at shorter than 2 to 1. Now, I'm not saying the latest exhibition is going to be shorter than 2 to 1, but it does show that it's a race that just often goes to the classier kind of grade 1 horse. And this horse has already won a grade 1. I just like him quite a lot for this race.
Yeah, I have to echo a lot of what Rory says there. For me, latest exhibition is the best of the Irish in this race. I think step up the 3 miles will suit him. As Rory said, his dam was a very good mare, Aura About You. She won over 2-6 over fences, and I've absolutely no doubt she'd have stayed 3 miles, but she just didn't get the chance. She was hurt early enough. She got an injury apparently. But this horse looks to me as if 3 miles will be the crowning of him. And I think the big thing here is, if he was trained by Willie Mullins or Gordon Elliott, he'd be half the price he is now. He's trained by Paul Nolan, who is a very good trainer, but he's had a number of years in the doldrums. He hasn't had a good horse for a while, but he's got a really good one here. And I think this fella has done nothing but improve. Like Rory said, I like the fact that he's a 7-year-old. I think this is a 3-mile novice hurdle. It's a long way for inexperienced young horses, and I think they need to be a little bit hardy, and I think latest exhibition is that. I like Time Hill. I have nothing against the horse, but I do think latest exhibition is a really solid chance. Of the other Irish ones, I think Willie Mullins has had a lot of similar type novice hurdlers this year. He's a lot of really nice staying novices that will make nice staying novice chasers next year, and the best of them is Monkfish. But I think he needs to improve again, to be honest. Maybe the step up to 3 miles will bring about that much improvement, but he just lacks a little bit of experience for me. Latest exhibition has that. Monkfish got beaten by a horse called Deal Kerr, who's still in the race but hasn't been seen for a long time. He's obviously got loads of ability, but he must be fragile enough. I don't know if he'll run or not. But for me, I think latest exhibition is rock solid, and I think he's a bigger price than he deserves to be. So, and he'll probably go off a bigger price than he deserves to be. So he could be an each way bet, but I think he'll take a lot of beating.
Yeah, just to touch on one more point quickly about that, Albert Bartlett. If you are in the realms of following this champion bumper form last year with the likes of Envoy Allen, Abacadabra, maybe Time Hill, just be aware that Semper also is set to run in the Albert Bartlett. He was only maybe 4 or 5 lengths behind Time Hill in the champion bumper last season. He was keeping on well up the running, and he's a much bigger price. He's about a 20 to 1 shot for Joseph O'Brien. So he sort of comes out of last year's champion bumper as well, having shaped pretty well in the race. He's a proper stayer, and he's a big price.
Yeah. Right, let's move on to the Gold Cup. It's almost out of individual preference. It's very hard to say horse X is better than horse Y, especially when there's 8 or 9 or 10 horses in that bracket. The price boost that we've got, Ryan, is 4 Album Photo. Do you think you'll go off favourite next Friday?
Just to mention on the price boost, Jamie, so there's a bit of a mix-up with them coming down at 10 and 11, so between 9 and 10 tomorrow morning, you'll have the Album Photo price boost, 7 to 2 to 5 to 1. So one of the lads decided to head home a little bit early, so there's not much I could do with that. Yeah, Album Photo and Santini are joint favourites in our betting at the moment. At 7 to 2. Santini shortened up, having been bigger in the past week or so. He was about 4 to 1, 9 to 2. He's now joint favourite. In my opinion, Album Photo should be clear favourite in the race, considering that he's been there and done it. And he won last year in the manner that looked as though he could easily win a second Gold Cup. Delta Work is in there at 5 to 1, Lost Translations at 13 to 2. But for me, my selection in the race would be Album Photo, given that, as I said, he looked like he could go on and win another one from last season. He's had the exact same preparation. I think that's the key. Willie Mullins won the race for the first time last year. He's producing them fresh again this year. It seems to be the way to do. When Native River won his Gold Cup, he was fresh going into it. He was obviously beat a couple of times in the Gold Cup when he had a couple of extra runs. So I think that might be the key to it. And Santini just looks an out-and-out plotter, which Album Photo, to me, has a little bit of class and can quicken off the end of a race over 3 miles too, whereas I don't think Santini is able to.
Right, because it's the Gold Cup and because there's lots of light and shade in this, let's just go along the line, and one horse who you don't like to go on the top of the market, and the one horse that you do. Start with you, Bill.
The one horse that I do is Album Photo, and the one horse that I don't is Santini.
In the same stance. The one horse that I do like is Album Photo, and the two I don't like are Lost in Translation and Clanders Oboe.
Well, I don't like Clanders Oboe, I don't like Delta Work, I don't particularly like Santini. I do like Album Photo.
Rory?
I don't really like Delta Work, and I do like Lost in Translation.
Someone tell me about Album Photo, then. Give me your reason for that.
To be honest, I think Ryan touched on it all pretty well. He was very impressive in the race last year. He impressed with the way that he sort of had 95% of the horses covered all the way around, the way that he travelled through it. He came from, it was a patient ride, a confident ride, and he just picked them off one by one pretty readily. I do like the fact that he's had that preparation again, the same preparation where they've quite clearly just thought, look, we can win the Gold Cup again with this horse, let's aim him at it and do that, and they've not worried about too much else all season. Obviously he came back on New Year's Day, looked the same horse again, and there's no reason really why he shouldn't produce the same performance at Cheltenham again. So he's rock solid, isn't he? I think he has got that little bit more class and pace about him than Santini does. I think Santini has the potential, if they go hard early, which they probably will do, he has the potential to just lose his position a little bit, and if he clouts one or two, you know, he could easily end up back in the field. And at the same price as Album Photo, to be honest, I just simply don't think he's achieved anything like as much as what he has. And the other horse that I would like a little bit is Lost in Translation, and I sort of compare the way that Santini beat Bristol de Mai at Cheltenham, where in my opinion Bristol de Mai isn't as good as he is at Haydock. And then I look at the way that Lost in Translation toyed with him and cantered all over him at Haydock and just put him in his place very easily. And I think Lost in Translation essentially is just a better horse than Santini for me. I think Santini's a proper stayer, real stayer, and unless the Gold Cup becomes a complete slugfest in the mud, I don't see him winning the race. I just think he'll lose his position and be very vulnerable coming down the hill.
I'll pick up there from Martin. I think that the dynamic of this race has changed quite a lot in the last week and a half. Firstly, with Native River coming out, because there's now no obvious front runner who's going to make the race a real searching test. I know that a lot of those who are prominent in the market are going to want to be prominent, but which of those jockeys is actually going to want to make the race a real test? Whereas you knew that Richard Johnson would have gone out gung-ho from the front on Native River. And secondly, the forecast. The forecast is for a largely dry week next week. There's a chance that it's getting close to goodish ground by next Friday. And I think that swings the race a lot more in Lost in Translation's favour than the likes of Santini and Album Photo. I don't have a lot against Album Photo. He won the race really well last year. I just do think that he is an out-and-out stayer, and if the race is on good ground, when he was a novice, he was shaping only third best in the RSA when he fell at the last. I just wonder whether he does have the speed if the race is a genuine speed test. And I think I really agree with what Martin says about Lost in Translations winning the Betfair Chase over Bristol de Mai. He was the first horse to ever beat Bristol de Mai at Haydock. I think that is worth a lot more than Santini's win against Bristol de Mai in the Cotswold Chase, in which Bristol de Mai was even giving Santini a couple of pounds as well, and he made a bad mistake 3 out. I just think that Haydock form is worth a lot more, and you do have to forgive him the run in the King George. I think that he was possibly feeling the effects of the Haydock race to some extent. But even then, he was getting right back into the race 4 out when he ploughed through the fourth last, and he was pulled up after that. I quite like the fact that he's kind of almost had that bad run, and then they've instinctively given him time to recover. He's coming into the race a fresh horse. I think Ryan touched on that about the Gold Cup, and coming into the race fresh can be an advantage. His form from last year gets stronger all the time. He was very closely tied in with Defi de Soy for a large part of last year. He then went on to Aintree and he beat Top of the Game. Yes, you could argue that Top of the Game was possibly over the top after his RSA win, but if you take that form literally, I think he's got a massive chance. And I think the drying ground and the lack of a real searching pace very much swings me. I wasn't really having an opinion a couple of weeks ago, but I think both of those things swings me towards Lost in Translation.
Right, so then let's just finish up. Anything else from the Friday? The handicaps, the Hunter Chase. What else have we got? You got any? Right.
I'll just mention one. He was a bigger price last week. He's a joint favourite now, I think, for the Martin Pipe, along with, like the way you're thinking, his Front View. Joseph O'Brien trains him. He ran a really good race last time and he ran on to finish second. I think this race has been a plan for quite a while now. He was second to Envoy Allen in his maiden hurdle in Down Royal. There was winners in behind that on that occasion. He looks tailor-made for the race, and there's talk of John O'Neill Jr. taking the ride on him. So I think he's 6-1 at the moment. He's joint favourite, as I said, but I can see him going off much shorter on the day.
I got Greta team for the Grand Annual. You won't see many smoother transitions to fences from an inexperienced horse. Unbeaten through 3 runs, has looked an out-and-out professional, much like Copperhead, who we discussed for the earlier race, hasn't even looked like making a mistake. That Grand Annual year in, year out is contested by the same sort of old horses who've seen better days. Maybe it was last year, the year before, Gino Trailer won the weekend, was there or thereabouts in it. He's always crying out for something unexposed, and he wouldn't have been, certainly in 12 months' time, I think we'll probably be talking about him along the realms of a potential champion chase horse, and he's in a handicap, and it's traditionally one of the weaker handicaps of the week. Plus he'll get a prominent ride, which is always a huge thing in that race.
I'd have to echo what Ryan said there about Front View. He looks an absolute plot for the Martin Pipe. I'm not saying that a JP horse wasn't trying his hardest last time out, but he drifted like a barge at Thurles the last day, and I felt that Mark Walsh was quite happy to finish second. He got him as close as he needed to get him. Made a little bit of trouble, made a mistake at the last, still finished second, looked full of running, and I think he's got Cheltenham plot written all over him. So he's been well found in the market is the only thing. Another horse that I've been very sweet on in that race for a long time, and I'm hoping he runs in it, is Alpha Mix. He's in that, he's in a couple of Novice Hurdles, he's in the Coral Cup as well, he's one of Gavin Cromwell's. He's a lightly raced, unexposed handicapper. He won a handicap hurdle at Navan 2 starts back, and then bumped into a really good horse called Kilfanora the other day. Finished second, and he was miles clear of the third horse. He hasn't gone up too much for that, and like I said, he's unexposed. He's about, I think he was about 14-1 the last time I checked for the Martin Pipe. He might be even bigger. I hope he's even bigger. He's comes out very well in our rating. 16. You can get him as high as 25s if you shop around. He's in the Coral Cup as well, but I think the Martin Pipe is a better race for him. But yeah, I think Front View has a very obvious chance in that race. There's also I've no real opinion on the Hunter's Chase, but I know there's a lot of talk about an Enda Bodger horse called Staker Wallace, who was beaten by William Mullins' Bill away at Naas 2 starts back. He's since won a point by a long distance. Now it was a smaller field, so it's hard to tell, but I'm fairly certain that he's come in for a good bit of money in the interim, so he's one possibly that people will be interested in. There's a rumour that Derek O'Connor's going to ride him as opposed to Manila Rocco, so we'll watch this space.
I'll just talk about one in the county hurdle quickly. Obviously this is a massive field, it's been hard to have a strong view, I suppose, but ever since I think basically she was one of the most eye-catching horses of the season. Eglantine du Soy, when she ran in a handicap hurdle at Punchestown at the Dublin Racing Festival. It was her first run in a handicap. This is the horse that won the Dawn Ride and Mayor's Novice Hurdle at last year's festival at a massive price. She powered up the hill that day. She ran her first handicap at Leopardstown last time, and she shaped incredibly well. She was forced really wide. She made the ground about 8 wide, surged forward from right off the pace, even got upsized at the last. It was a hugely inefficient move, and she was only beaten just over a length in the end. The British handicapper did spot that, unsurprisingly, and she's off a mark of 149, which is going to leave her with near enough top weight, which is a slight negative, but That was her first handicap. She powered up the hill last year to win the Mayor's Novice Hurdle. I think she's got a really big chance. If she'd have been ridden efficiently last time, I think she was ready for a 3 or 4 length win, if I'm honest. I think she's got more to come. She's unexposed. I quite like her in the county hurdle.
Yeah, and that's one of Rory's charity bets. One of my charity bets is in the Mountain Pipe as well. I know this is full of Irish plots and paths, but I do like this pylon a lot. He's won 3 out of 4 starts. The one time he got beat though was perhaps the most interesting because he was 4th to Chantry Houses by Yates, and he's just been crying out for a stamina test, the sort of stamina test that this will provide. So there goes our charity bet. To take a snapshot of that if you can, if you want. That's it from us. Thank you so much for your brilliant attendance and brilliant patience throughout the evening. And because I don't work for Timeform anymore, I'm allowed to say if Altior wins the Champion Chase, you can all come for free next year. Thanks a lot, everyone.